a top Democrat. He's the man whose job it is to try to win back the House for his party. He unveiled his plan to solve that midterm turnout puzzle. He thinks he knows how to get a lot more Democrats to vote this November and to make sure that for his party, 2014 is nothing like 2010. And he's here now to tell us about that plan. Congressman Steve Israel of New York. He's the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. He joins us from his home district. And Congressman, thanks for joining us. So I was really interested in this because you gave a presentation to your fellow Democrats this week based on what looks like an awful lot of research into what actually motivates people to go out and vote. And also what really interested me about this was you were pretty candid, it seemed, about what doesn't motivate people. And one thing in the reporting that I kind of want to start by asking you about is the minimum wage. We hear about the minimum wage, all the time. Democrats have tried to get this on the back number of states this year, the idea maybe to goose turnout a little bit. And you're basically saying this is an issue with a lot of public support for it, a lot of broad support for it, but it's not an issue that necessarily gets people out to the polls.
Well, you have to put it in a contrast. Thank you for having me on, Steve. On the minimum wage and on many other issues, our research shows that we are winning decisively with voters across the board on those key economic issues. But you have to put it in a contrast. And here's the contrast. Would you rather vote for a House Republican who will oppose increasing the minimum wage, but continues to support increasing their minimum wage, increasing oil company subsidies, increasing minimal subsidies for the special interests, or will you vote for a House Democrat who's got the backs of the middle class, who's going to support strengthening the middle class? On those contrasts, we have two key advantages. One, we win decisively on those economic contrasts, and they motivate people to go out and vote. And number two, those contrasts resonate across the board. They're important to voters in urban districts. They're important to voters in suburban Philadelphia, in the suburbs of Florida, the suburbs of Illinois and California. They're important to rural voters. So you're right, we do have that challenge, but we also have those two key opportunities, which is why the next 6 months will be a referendum on who's got your back.
Well, so I want to ask you about that because there was a polling out this week. Politico went and they surveyed basically battleground House districts. They tried to get, sort of President Obama's approval rating, how the parties are viewed in battleground House districts. And what they came up with was the generic ballot. Which party, which candidate would you like to vote for this November? Republicans leading. This is not all House districts. Again, this is just sort of, these are the most competitive ones. 39% for the Republican candidate, 30% for the Democratic candidate. I just wonder if you could take a step back maybe in light of what you just said about the advantages your research shows that your party has, the basic almost philosophical advantages that your party has. When you poll like that, and there's other polls out there that basically are showing that, similar findings, what is it that at a baseline level makes people at this point more likely to say, they want a Republican in Congress than a Democrat?
Steve, first of all, the day that poll came out, another poll came out that showed us ahead on that ballot of who would you vote for, a Democrat or a Republican in Congress, which is why I don't pay much attention to these polls. I'm a baseball fan. A good baseball fan never predicts the ninth inning and the first inning. Being a Mets fan, I don't predict the ninth inning and the ninth inning. So these polls really don't mean a lot at this point in time. But the fact of the matter is, those ballots are tight. We're up a couple, we're down a couple. The point of this research is that despite that tight environment on every single economic issue, on the contrast between Republicans who protect their perks and their privilege and the special interests and Democrats who are fighting for the middle class, we win decisively, which is why this campaign is going to be about those contrasts and who's got your back.
So your counterpart on the Republican side, Greg Walden from Oregon, he made some news this week, and he said the Republicans have 233 members of the House right now, and he predicts that at the end of this cycle, he's the chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee, he said they're going to have 245. He said we are going to pick up, Republicans are going to pick up 12 seats this fall. I know you responded by saying you don't want to make predictions, but I guess what I want to ask you is a sort of bigger picture question here, and that is, we know the nature of these midterm elections, and you're trying to change that this year, and you think you found a way, but we know that to even pick up any seats for the White House party in a midterm is practically unheard of, and when it happens, very small amount, right? When the Democrats picked up seats in the 98 midterms when Clinton was president, they picked up 5, and it was shocking. It was not since James Monroe had in the 6th year the White House party picked up seats. So you guys need 17 right now to pick up the House. Is it fair to say that you're playing a longer game here where 2014 is about setting up 2016 when you'll have that presidential environment and you'll really be able to pick up some big seats then potentially?
Well, first of all, Greg, I like Greg Walden, but that was showboating. And he can look in crystal balls all he wants. I'm going to look at the fundamentals on how you win elections. And on every single one of those fundamentals, we are exceeding every expectation. You know, Greg Walden makes these prophecies about winning a historic number of seats. I'll give you some history. We're in the minority party. We beat the Republicans by $3 million in April because our grassroots is so animated. They can't wait to vote, and they're supporting us with small donations. And so we beat the Republicans on that. We're beating them on field programs. How do you get surge voters to turn out in a midterm? You put people in the field. We already have dozens of congressional districts covered by paid field staff and thousands of volunteers. Those are the fundamentals that count. Now we know from our research that we have a message that works across the board with progressive voters, with moderate voters, and we're going to stick with those fundamentals without making prophecies.
Are you expecting Hillary Clinton to be an active campaigner this fall on behalf of House Democratic candidates?
I sure hope so. I have said to Secretary Clinton that not the minute she decides whether she wants to help us, but the second she decides whether she wants to help us, we would enjoy having that involvement.
And have you gotten any indication from them if they're going to? If she's going to?
She's not made any indication to us as yet. I did brief President Clinton several weeks ago, actually about a month and a half ago, on our races. And we hope, as he always has done, that he will engage in helping us elect more Democrats to defend the middle class.
All right. My thanks to Congressman Steve Israel, chairman of the DCCC, for taking the time and joining us this morning.